What's the worst mistake you've seen someone do in their job? Update. The biggest question is, what company is this? This was over 22 years ago in Asia. I apologize for not remembering the name, but they went under shortly after. Plant manager let the safety guy go because they didn't believe safety was a full-time job and wanted to cut back on company spending and decided the supervisors could do all the safety audits, training, keep the building up to code. Not even a week later, 2 guys got their arms cut off working on a machine that they weren't trained certified on, and the back building caught fire due to pallets and cardboard boxes being stacked in the wrong area near the furnace. As the saying goes, if you think safety is expensive, try having an accident. This is very common and is one of the big issues companies have when it comes to people specialized in the safety field. If they're doing their job right, nothing major ever happens and it seems like they're not needed, so they get let go. Then nobody is paying attention to safety and accidents happen, and the company suddenly realizes they need someone who specializes in safety. Sorry, just really morbidly curious and want to be clear. 2 separate guys got both their arms cut off for a total of 4 lost limbs in a single workplace accident. Jesus Christ. Were they at all salvageable? Working with a tree cutting service in Tampa, I was asked by the boss to ascend a nearby tree and cut some limbs. After seeing how close they were to power lines, I refused. He got really pissed off, yelled at me to clean up the area. Then he sent up Dallas. Dallas put on his climbing spikes, rooked up the tree and started cutting. I was worried and kept watching him as I picked up limbs. Sure enough, he leaned back and before I could yell, put his sweaty bare back right against the power lines. A bright blue flash arced across his back and his body jerked away and slammed against the tree trunk. He bounced off and back into the wires. And again. Finally, his spikes got dislodged and he fell out of the tree, falling until his safety line snapped taut, leaving him dangling upside down like a broken back doll.
I thought he was dead, but a moment later he started moaning, then screaming.
I'm on fire, he yelled. We lowered him to the ground to the sound of sirens approaching. A neighbor had seen what happened and called EMT. A nasty black mark curved across his back and the current had surged down his legs and through his boot heels, seeking out ground. Both his heels were blown out. I quit at the end of the day. I worked for a tree company too, and my boss was fond of cutting costs as much as possible. One day we had 2 pine oaks to cut down that were 140 feet tall. He wanted it done in 2 days, but obviously these were going to be multi-day trees to cut down. We got most of the branches off one and my boss decides to cut it at the base without topping it in a backyard that was way too small. Sure as shit, once the tree started to go, it smashed the neighbor's fence and tree line, and we left for the day, so the insurance adjuster could come out and quote a price for damages. I left about a week later, and about a month ago, I heard that one of the guys from that crew almost died cutting down a cottonwood with that same crew. It was a damn good thing I left when I did. Forget they had cocaine in their pocket while crossing a border. This led the Austrian Border and Customs Police to open up about 100 cans of exposed film stock that was in the van the guy was driving. Film stock from a very expensive film, shoot the week before. The result was second unit had to go back and reshoot an entire action set piece for the film. Line producer told me the mistake cost about 5 million euros. I worked at a car dealership several years back. There was a new mechanic who was there barely a week and tasked to go fill all the brand new, top-of-the-line, biggest diesel trucks on the lot. Diesel. The guy filled all the trucks with regular gas at the gas station down the street, then drove them back to the lot. He was fired pretty quickly after that. Oh, another one. Worked at a large casino in a large tourist city. The penthouse garden was being redone, and the gardener has put tarpaulins down to protect the tiles. A storm rolled through, and the tarps were blocking the drains, so the garden flooded back into the penthouse, down the lift shaft, and into the restaurant I worked. Chaos. 2 years later, I'm working in a different hotel, same city. The restaurant had a fountain in it. I come in to open up one morning, and the restaurant is flooded. Gardener has turned on the fountain tap to refill and forgot to turn it off. It was the same gardener. Saw a guy get zapped pretty bad when he stuck a tool in the wrong place on a big dryer at a hotel where I worked. We had asked him if he should cut the power first, and he said, "No, don't need to." For a moment after, we thought he was dead. If he's not dead, he's so fucking lucky. I hope he never makes that mistake again. He was rebooting. In the air, Doctor wrote down an order for 15 mg of Toradol, anti-inflammatory painkiller, and the nurse I was training misread and started to draw up 15 mg of Haldol, antipsychotic. That's triple the standard dose for Haldol. This was for a patient with abdominal pain. The nurse I was training didn't question it at all. This wasn't a newly graduated nurse mind, just new to my department. Yes, I stopped her before she gave the No, she did not continue to work in the air. At certain points in my life, I have considered nursing. I love to learn. I like to help people. Medicine is really interesting. I'm not squeamish. I can turn on sense of urgency, movement, speed. But I just know I could not handle any job where a minor fuck-up can result in death. I think I will stick to jobs where misreading sloppy handwriting only leads to a silly story. Thank you for being there and handling it. An IT worker once sent an advisory to the entire company about an email several people had received with a malware link. She did so by forwarding the actual email with the link. I have a similar situation, corporate email blunders. That happened a few years back. Some woman sent out a happy Thanksgiving reminder email about some potluck she was hosting to our entire company, a global bank. An email that was clearly meant for a few of her friends at work, as it was a potluck at her personal home in upstate Nye. Most people just deleted the email, but of course a few dozen boomers decided to reply all with "please take me off this email chain," which started the chaos of endless emails about this fucking potluck for like a whole week, because these people just kept replying all asking to be taken off the email chain. Honestly, it was hilarious. Not sure if this counts, but during my first internship at a chemical plant, I was given the task of reading through safety violation reports and sorting them. This turned out to be way more interesting than I initially expected, as the reports were riddled with accounts of sheer stupidity in the workplace. Here are a few of the most memorable incidents. A woman accidentally glued her own eye shut after trying to reattach a fake nail with industrial strength, heavy-duty superglue, and then subsequently rubbing her eye. Someone somehow accidentally mixed an acidic compound from an unmarked bottle into their beverage and drank it. Not as much stupid as it is fascinating. A man working atop some scaffolding forgot to attach his safety harness and fell from 20 feet onto his back. The report stated that he stood up, somehow okay after falling from that high, and came back to work the next day, good as new. Third guy is one lucky son of a bitch. There was a company in rural New York in the late 1960s that took scrap metal, melted it down in big coal, fired crucibles and made home decor pieces. Doorstops that looked like little dogs, bookends, that kind of thing. Not a huge profit margin, but their materials were cheap and they had a steady market. An industrial consultant convinced them to transition to electric furnaces, significant upfront expense, but much lower ongoing operating costs. The consultant even designed the new electric crucibles for the company. The company president had been thinking of expanding operations, so asked the industrial consultant to double the size of the electric crucible design. The consultant did so, but made a mistake with the cube. Square law in designing the supports for the crucible. The first time the double-sized, but about 4 times as heavy, crucibles were filled with scrap and fired up, they collapsed, flooding the factory floor with molten pot metal and chunks of wrecked equipment. The company went straight to bankruptcy. Now would that be fault of the consultant or the president? Because that's a fuck-up. Went to a new gyne about a lump in my breast. Immediate ultrasound. Then silence. I called the office and the office person said, "Oh, you're fine." I said, "Really? I'm asking about the ultrasound." "Yeah, it's fine." 3 years later, my CP asked if I had any lumps during a yearly exam. I said, "Yes, it's right there in my records. Same medical group and all have access to the same info." 2 days later, I'm diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. The rest is a whirlwind and I'm kicking butt. Smells like malpractice to me. I worked at a jail as a corrections tech. One day an inmate had an allergic reaction. This let's call him Father, came into the tank with a nurse. This is an open tank. With a nurse, this is an open tank. There are 15, 20 other inmates in there. The nurse decided to administer an EpiPen. Father took the EpiPen from the nurse and tried to administer it to the inmate. Just to clarify, a fully trained and educated nurse has a medical instrument taken by the biggest fucking idiot ever. He holds the auto-injector upside down with his thumb on the needle and plunges it into the inmate's thigh, releasing the needle into his thumb. The is on the ground. The nurse has no extra EpiPens. The inmate is about to fucking die. The other cars are on their way, but I have no idea how to relay what just happened. Luckily, the nurse was able to go back to the nurse's station and grab another EpiPen before the inmate died. The kicker, Father only got a warning. He almost killed an inmate. That whole jail was a fucking circus. Before retiring, I was a branch manager for my state's Lofi. Suddenly, one of the other managers is off sick for a few days. Then it became a week, 2 weeks. Then the auditors completed their investigation, and she was gone. Turns out she was accepting bribes from aspiring truck drivers so they would pass the written test. She was taking in an additional $100 a week, $250 a week. The dumb part. The pay was decent, and the benefits were fantastic. So she gave up decent pay, fantastic benefits, and a really nice retirement for extra spending money. Then there was the assistant manager who would pocket anywhere from $750 to $1,500 a week, so a better payoff. But she was removing it from the day's cash receipts. She had only ever worked for the Dumvie. Working her was up from clerk. She had no idea that there are accounting systems within accounting systems. The bank would send over deposit discrepancy reports, which she would blithely pitch, not realizing that the same exact report was also sent to our central office. The wheels of state government turn slowly, so she was able to do this for over a year. But once those wheels start, they do not stop. She ended up going to prison and ordered to pay over $30 skin restitution. The full manager also got fired because the investigation revealed that he was rarely in the office and left everything up to the assistant manager. She had no idea that there are accounting systems within accounting systems. A friend's former co-worker got caught that way. She'd figured out a way to charge someone's credit card, then transfer it to herself while simultaneously refunding it. Or maybe cancelling. This was a long time ago, the deets are hazy. So if anyone saw the unauthorized charge, they'd assume someone had corrected a mistake, not reported. However, there were imbalances elsewhere in the system, and she got caught within a few months. The interesting part was that she wasn't prosecuted, just made to resign. The company was more concerned about her making restitution, which she couldn't do from jail. They didn't even put it in her employee file. It made me wonder how many cases of embezzlement go unreported. That first one reminds me of a security guy at my job. He had been there for about a year, and while it wasn't a lucrative job, he made decent money for the position and tons of benefits. He was fired for stealing toilet paper from the janitorial closet. This was low-quality, super-thin commercial toilet paper too. He had been doing it for a couple months before I was asked to put a camera in the closet. A local dealership was promoting a contest where they would give away a truck. I was driving around with my parents who were visiting from out of state when we hear the commercial for the giveaway on the radio. The drawing was in about 15 minutes, and we were right there, so we stopped in and put our names in the collection bin. I watched them take the bin upstairs out of sight of the crowd. They had clearly selected the winner in the back room and announced that if the winner was not present, they will contact them for the winnings. So they chose a winner. That was clearly from out of state. But what they didn't realize was that it was my mum visiting for the weekend. She walks right up to the announcer, showed her license and said, "I'm so happy I won the truck." The look on their faces was priceless. For the next couple of weeks, the dealership tried everything to not give us the truck. It was clear that they had no idea how to even give away the truck.
But would we prepared a truck? And I'm happy to say we love the truck.
I worked for a startup cider manufacturer in my second year of college. Normally, after a day of production, we have to sanitize all the metal components in hot caustic wash. There are hundreds of pieces, so it takes a while. Anyways, our managers left us an hour before our shift ended to clean up. I had to go do some e-commerce end-of-day stuff before leaving, so my co-worker wrapped up the cleanup. On Monday, we returned to the warehouse burned out. Apparently, he left the caustic heater on all weekend and it caused a chemical fire. Everything was destroyed and it ended up bankrupting the company. He dropped out of his co-op degree after he wouldn't be able to get recommended for another placement. He could probably have just waited a year and tried again. Last placement failed because the company went bankrupt. Poor luck on my part. Newish employee deleted the root directory for the safety server. Took the server guys about a day and a half to fully restore it with all files since the previous night, backup lost. Same employee did the exact same thing again a few weeks later. Still had a job when I left somehow. That sounds like it's a problem on company side. How can such files be even deleted? Here all important folders are protected. Do it once. Okay, everybody makes mistakes. Let's learn from it and move on. Twice, that's on their senior admin's management. Juniors being allowed to do this kind of thing repeatedly on production servers is a failure of policy. You expect juniors to mess up. They aren't learning unless they are. You need guardrails to ensure they can't wreak too much havoc. Taught preschool for 8 years before the pandemic. It's protocol to count the children before moving from one room to another to make sure no one gets left behind. Had a co-worker on her phone, didn't count kids, and had left behind a child in the toy closet. Kid was 2 years old and trapped, screaming and crying in a dark toy closet for 20 minutes before a teacher passing by the empty classroom heard her. My co-worker didn't even get a slap on the wrist, and management never told parents. This same co-worker forced her class of 2-year-olds to get dressed themselves for outside play in the winter, so one time a little girl ended up playing outside in the Minnesota snow without boots on for 10 minutes before my co-worker noticed. Why is she working with kids then, poor babies? Printed 500 copies of her gas bill on the company printer. The printer only has enough tray capacity for 250 copies, so she had to have reloaded the paper at least once. But why? Haha, in primary school, I accidentally sent a job to the printer of 1,000 instead of one I don't know how, but loads of sheets started printing off, and I was so confused, then I started getting so scared, thinking I'd done something illegal. I used to work as a maid in a motel, and our usual supervisor was out sick. The person who took her place that day mixed ammonia and bleach in a window cleaner bottle and poisoned me with ammonia chloride gas fumes when I sprayed the bathroom mirror. If the maintenance man hadn't come by and found me unconscious, it could have killed me. For several months after, I had respiratory problems, vision issues, and a lingering burn in my nose and throat. I had a girl that worked for me that one day had a guy try to pay with a $100 bill. We all knew that we did not take any bill over $20, but she didn't listen sometimes. This time she took the bill, and when she was cashing out her drawer, the smart safe didn't take the $100 bill. I asked if she checked it, and she of course said yes. I looked at the bill and noticed it said movie prop on the bill. She somehow missed it. Side note. Went to an unground rapper concert, and one of the better Mao rappers was throwing hundreds and 20s, just to find out after they turned on the light, they were all prop money. Dude gave the signal that he was done working on a forge. Then he put his arm in to check something. His robot arm is pretty cool though. Last year, guy died at his house. Daughter calls police for a well-being check. Police show up, dad's dead. Police called medical examiner, but he's old and died of natural causes. No need to bring him in the meme. The police call the daughter and tell her to call the funeral home. Funeral home tells officer they're en route to the house. 5 days later, funeral comes to medical examiner to pick up body. I'm like, guy never came into the building. He was released to the funeral home. Let me go figure out what happened. Several phone calls later, we find out the funeral home forgot to pick up the guy, and he was still at the house. Because he was now decomposed, he then turned into an May case. I don't know what happened after that. Tough luck. Too bad the me died of natural causes. A girl on the till had a guy come up and buy a $2 pack of gum with a $100 note saying sorry he didn't have anything smaller. She gave him his $98 change and he left. He came back in a few minutes later and said, hey, I found a $2 coin in my car. Can I have my $100 back? So she did it. It was a small shop, so it was a tough scam to fall for. She also managed to lock herself out of her own car while it was running, but parked in a way that no one could get in or out of the car park. I had to redo comment a second time to find out what was wrong. I guess it would work on me low. This is a type of quick change scam. The more common variations just involve someone claiming they gave the cashier a bigger bill than they actually did. When I worked retail, we had a woman pay with a $100 bill for a reasonably expensive order. The $100 was put into the bill slot on the side of the cash register closest to the customer. While the cashier was counting singles, the woman reached over and took her $100 bill back without the cashier noticing. I rang an order big enough that we had to call the bank to verify a check. While we waited, the customer's friend said they were going to wait in the car and casually grabbed a bag off the cart as they walked out. Before the manager came back, the customer just turned and walked off. Turns out they were writing bad checks so they could distract us with calling the bank, then grabbing stuff off the cart and walking out. Had a guy when I worked at a grocery store try to buy a fried chicken, like $4.99, with a fake $100. I noticed it felt weird and just didn't look right. Might have been dirty, but I was like, I don't have change, let me run over to customer service and break this for you. Wandered over with the $100 in hand, told my buddy, who was the pick at the time working there, that this was a fake $100. And he checked it, confirmed it fake, and we contacted the police to come in. Guy hung around until the officer showed up and they conversed, cop and Guy. I don't know what happened to him, but it was definitely one of those moments where, if I had simply accepted it, I would have been in deep shit. A lady in our sales department sent a racial message bashing foreigners and how cheap they all are to another co-worker using our company email, which tagged the entire company. The CEO is also foreign. Saw a guy load a bar in a bandsaw in an unsafe way, and the bandsaw blade spun the bar and shot it off across the shop like a railgun. Company director sent his travel plans for a work convention to the communal printer in the staff room. Bet him and the other director would have had a lovely time. 5-hotel presidential suite in Barcelona for a week sounded nice. Barcelona for a week sounded nice. His wife thought so too and was furious. She wasn't going also surprised that him and Lady Director were sharing a room for a week, and that when she looked into it, there was no convention. Things went south pretty fast, and now the company is no more. Sounds like our old president. Back in the day, the travel company left a message on his home answering machine to confirm the holiday, except he wasn't taking his wife. Unfortunately, she got the message first, and that's how she found out about his girlfriend. But did they still go on the get away? Work in a brewery. One morning a brewer went to run a clean in place on a 60-barrel vessel. After the vessels are empty, they usually are under some significant pressure, usually anywhere from 5-15 side. Guy did not degas the fermenter before taking the sample port off. These vessels had 2 ports on them, and we put a 1.5-inch cap on one port and a Perlick sample faucet on the other. He starts with a stainless steel cap. All of the pressure came out like a bullet. I could hear from the other side of a rather large facility. Dude got lucky and the cap barely missed his head. He did get a bunch of yeast and hop residue in his eyes as his safety glasses were on top of his head and not covering his eye. I drove him to the hospital and he's okay. Just got fired a couple weeks later. Bet he wears his fucking safety glasses now. I was working in a tool and die shop in my early 20s, and I was watching an old guy who was perpetually drunk pound in an injector pin into a plastic injection mold with a big piece of steel round stop. Well, as he was pounding the pin in, he missed the pin and hit his thumb. It looked like his thumb exploded. He was in such pain he pissed himself. They ended up amputating down to the first knuckle. Then, to make matters worse, he got fired for being drunk on the job. Drunk in a machine shop is always bad news. Told a newbie to clean the steel panels on the deep fryers, expecting them to wipe them down with a cloth. They instead grabbed a jug of water and decided to rinse it with water going into the still hot oil. Yanked them back so fast I nearly gave them whiplash. And an answer from Dad. A colleague dismantled a machine to fix it without first checking the pipes were cleared. The pipes were full of melted sugar. Very hot. He got horrific burns that made the skin slough off his hands. Sugar burns are insane. That poor guy. I'm a car mechanic. Had a colleague once who had a pretty small job on an engine, about an hour or two and costs like $50. Made a mistake, quite big, but also quite common and easy to make. It's the well shit category, not something to drag him through the mud for. Started fixing it, made an even bigger mistake. At this point, we even had to outsource some issues we couldn't fix in-house. We were looking for about 2 weeks and $500. On us, of course, not the customer, but it was still okay. We got everything back. He started putting the engine back together. All done, first run. Whoopsie, another big problem. Whole engine apart. Broke something again. Outsourced, expensive. Overall, it was about a month-long procedure, hitting $1,000. Once it was done, he got fired. He got away with a lot, but at one point it was way too much. Broke the spark plug while removing them. I'm a home appliance installer and was out working a pretty big job at some 20,000 square foot mansion. They had another installation team working on a second kitchen in the basement. One of these guys was drilling the mounting holes for the dishwasher into their granite countertop. Don't do this, okay? and drilled them too small, so when we went to secure it, a massive fourth chunk of granite split off and smashed into the floor, breaking a couple tiles in the process. Dude sounded like Yosemite Sam with his cussing, and the customer was pissed. I'm a heavy equipment operator, and a couple weeks ago, another operator on my job lowered the boom on an excavator at the wrong time and severed half a 22-year-old kid's thumb. I guess there's that. I know 2 people who have made over 40 payment to scammers. They never got the money back. I didn't see it in person, but there was a video I saw on Reddit fairly recently where somebody emptied the used deep fryer oil into a plastic bucket. Needless to say, it didn't hold. I never understood this. I refuse to deal with hot oil at a job unless they have the proper equipment. Skin grafts are not worth a few dollars over minimum wage. Every kitchen job I worked at cleaned the fryers when the oil was cold or a bit warm.